EPA proposes rescinding Obama-era endangerment finding. What it means for electric vehicles. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, has put forth a significant proposal aimed at revoking the 2009 endangerment finding, a decision that has been the foundation for over $1 trillion in regulations, including the electric vehicle EV mandates established by the Biden-Harris administration. If this proposal is finalized, it would eliminate all greenhouse gas emissions regulations for vehicles and engines, thereby restoring consumer choice and allowing Americans to purchase safe and affordable vehicles for their families. This change is expected to reduce living costs for all products transported by trucks. EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin made this announcement at an auto dealership in Indiana, accompanied by notable figures such as U.S. Secretary of Energy Chris Wright, Indiana Governor Mike Braun, and others. Since the issuance of the endangerment finding in 2009, many have argued that American citizens and the auto industry have faced considerable uncertainty and financial burdens due to extensive regulations on greenhouse gas emissions from vehicles. The EPA's current proposal aims to provide much-needed clarity and regulatory relief, enabling companies to plan effectively while offering consumers more affordable options when purchasing cars. This proposal signifies the Trump EPA's commitment to ending 16 years of uncertainty for both automakers and American consumers, stated Administrator Zeldin. He emphasized that numerous stakeholders have expressed concerns that the Obama and Biden administrations manipulated legal frameworks, disregarded established precedents, and misrepresented scientific data to achieve their objectives, ultimately imposing hidden taxes amounting to hundreds of billions of dollars on American families each year. Zeldin noted that if the endangerment finding and its associated regulations are rescinded, it could eliminate over $1 trillion in hidden taxes affecting American businesses and households. U.S. Secretary of Energy Chris Wright remarked, "Under President Trump's leadership, America is moving towards open discussions about climate and energy policies, focusing on data-driven decisions." He described the announcement as a pivotal step towards reinstating sensible policies that enhance access to affordable, reliable energy, thereby improving the quality of life for all Americans. Governor Mike Braun of Indiana criticized the previous administration's use of regulations as a political weapon that undermined American competitiveness without yielding tangible benefits. He expressed pride in the announcement being made in Indiana, highlighting the state's ability to balance environmental protection with job support. Congressman Jim Baird, in Senate 04, praised the efforts of President Trump, Administrator Zeldin, and Secretary Wright in dismantling costly vehicle emission standards and the stringent EV mandates, asserting that this administration is championing common sense and supporting American automakers and consumers. He expressed gratitude for their historic actions aimed at fostering American innovation and reducing costs for families. Congressman Mark Messmer, in Senate 08, criticized the endangerment finding as a tool used by Democrats to impose burdensome regulations that disregard practical science in favor of extreme Green New Deal agendas. He commended the Trump administration for cutting unnecessary red tape that hinders American businesses while safeguarding the nation's natural resources. Attorney General Todd Rokita noted that conservative state attorneys general have been pivotal in resisting the Biden administration's federal overreach and radical green agenda. He expressed optimism that, with the support of President Trump and his administration, they are now positioned to promote American energy. The American Trucking Association's president and CEO, Chris Spear, lauded the decision to rescind the GHG Phase 3 rule, which he argued would have devastated the trucking industry, disrupted supply chains, and increased costs for families and businesses. He emphasized the industry's commitment to reducing emissions and the need for policies that reflect real-world conditions. Small Business Administration Administrator Kelly Loeffler expressed enthusiasm for the end of the Obama-Biden era of stringent regulations, stating that the EPA's reconsideration of the endangerment finding could save small businesses at least $170 billion. She looks forward to collaborating with Administrator Zeldin to eliminate red tape and usher in a new era of prosperity for Main Street. The endangerment finding serves as the legal basis for the Obama and Biden administrations to regulate emissions from new motor vehicles and engines. Without this finding, the EPA would lack the authority under Section 202A of the Clean Air Act to set greenhouse gas emission standards. If the proposal is finalized, it is projected to save Americans $54 billion annually by repealing all greenhouse gas standards, including the Biden EPA's EV mandate. Should this proposal be enacted, it would eliminate greenhouse gas standards for light, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles and engines, starting with the EPA's initial greenhouse gas regulations for light-duty vehicles in 2010 and those for medium and heavy-duty vehicles in 2011, which included unpopular features like the start-stop technology found in many new cars. The EPA's proposal also references new scientific data that challenge the assumptions made in the 2009 endangerment finding, including updated studies from the Department of Energy's 2025 Climate Work Group, which is currently open for public comment. The EPA will initiate a public comment period to gather feedback on this proposal. More details regarding the public comment process will be available in the Federal Register and on the EPA's website. Hashtag How We Got Here. Under Section 202A of the Clean Air Act, Congress assigned the EPA the responsibility of establishing emission standards for new motor vehicles and engines when it is determined that emissions from any class of vehicles contribute to air pollution that poses a threat to public health or welfare. However, the Obama administration deviated from Congress's clear intent, creating an endangerment finding that was entirely separate from any actual emission standards. In a groundbreaking decision, the Obama EPA concluded that carbon dioxide emissions from vehicles, along with 5 other gases, some of which are not even emitted by vehicles, contribute to climate change, which in turn poses an unspecified risk to human health and welfare. These conclusions were indeed novel, but were the only means for the Obama-Biden administration to leverage the EPA's authority under Section 202A. Furthermore, the Obama EPA did not evaluate any potential regulations stemming from the endangerment finding. This finding subsequently supported 7 vehicle regulations with a total cost exceeding $1 trillion. It has also been instrumental in justifying regulations on other sources beyond automobiles, leading to additional financial burdens on American families and businesses. Since the 2009 endangerment finding, significant changes have occurred, including advancements in science and technology that warrant a reevaluation. Additionally, key Supreme Court rulings, such as Loper Bright Enterprises versus Raimondo, West Virginia versus EPA, Michigan versus EPA, and Utility Air Regulatory Group versus EPA, have clarified the extent of the EPA's authority under the Clean Air Act, emphasizing that major policy decisions should be made by Congress rather than administrative agencies. Background: in March 2025, during what is considered the most significant day of deregulation in U.S. history, Administrator Zeldin announced the formal reconsideration of the 2009 endangerment finding in collaboration with the Office of Management and Budget and other relevant agencies. This reconsideration includes a review of all prior regulations and actions that depend on the endangerment finding. For more information, please visit the Endangerment Finding Reconsideration website. Additionally, Administrator Zeldin announced the agency's intention to reevaluate the regulations for model year 2027 and later light-duty and medium-duty vehicles, as well as the greenhouse gas emission standards for heavy-duty vehicles. More details can be found on the termination of the EV mandate website. These announcements were made alongside several historic actions aimed at advancing President Trump's executive orders and revitalizing the American economy. While the EPA remains committed to its core mission of environmental protection, it is also dedicated to fulfilling President Trump's promise to unleash American energy, reduce costs for citizens, rejuvenate the auto industry, restore the rule of law, and empower states to make their own decisions. EPA Chief Lee Zeldin's bold move, repealing Obama-era climate regulation. Here's a bold move that's shaking the environmental world. The EPA chief is scrapping a key Obama-era climate rule, and the debate is heating up faster than a coal-fired power plant. But here's where it gets controversial. Is this a necessary step to protect American industries, or a dangerous retreat from addressing climate change? Let's break it down. Lee Zeldin, the head of the Environmental Protection Agency, recently defended his decision to undo a landmark regulation from the Obama administration. This rule, known as the Endangerment finding, declared that greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide and methane posed a threat to public health by accelerating climate change. For over a decade, the EPA used this finding to impose strict rules on industries ranging from automotive manufacturing to air travel and energy production. Critics, including many business leaders, argued these regulations risked destabilizing entire sectors of the economy. And this is the part most people miss. The endangerment finding became the legal foundation for the Biden administration's aggressive push toward electric vehicles. The plan aimed to make over half of all new car sales electric by 2032, a target that automakers and gas stations claimed would devastate their bottom lines. Zeldin, speaking at an Indiana car dealership in July, called repealing the rule the largest deregulatory action in U.S. history. He framed it as a victory for American manufacturers and consumers, ending years of regulatory uncertainty. When CNN's Cassie Hunt pressed Zeldin on his decision, he made a striking argument. The original endangerment finding was based on outdated assumptions from 2009. We're using 2025 facts, not 2009 bad assumptions, he insisted. Zeldin also claimed the Obama-era EPA overstepped its legal authority by interpreting the Clean Air Act creatively. You can't bend the law to meet your goals, he said, accusing former administrators of mental leaks to justify their policies. Here's the legal angle that's sparking debate. Section 202 of the Clean Air Act grants the EPA the power to regulate motor vehicles. Zeldin argued the Obama-era interpretation of this law went too far, allowing the agency to regulate not just cars, but entire industries like coal. He even accused the Biden administration of using the rule to regulate the coal industry out of existence. But if the law already permits this, where's the line between regulation and overreach? Is Zeldin protecting American jobs, or is he sidelining science to prioritize political goals? Zeldin's rhetoric grew more pointed as he warned, "We're not going to regulate entire sectors of the economy out of existence." He tied his stance to broader goals like making the U.S. the AI capital of the world and lowering energy costs. Yet critics counter that climate action is too urgent to be sidelined by legal technicalities. Should the EPA wait for Congress to act, or does the climate crisis justify bold, proactive measures? The fallout is already brewing. California's Governor Gavin Newsom has vowed to fight the repeal in court, while some lawmakers praise Zeldin's move as a win for free enterprise. As the nation grapples with energy independence, job security, and environmental responsibility, one question lingers. Can we balance economic growth with the realities of climate change? Or is this repeal a step backward in the fight for a sustainable future? What's your take? Share your thoughts below. This is a conversation worth having. EPA's controversial move, revoking pollution findings, explained. Few topics ignite such fierce debate as federal climate policy, and today that conversation is heating up again. The Environmental Protection Agency's latest move has sparked loud reactions from all sides. In a high-profile interview this weekend, EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin stood firmly behind the Trump administration's controversial decision to revoke the 2009 endangerment finding, a milestone declaration that officially concluded air pollution from fossil fuels puts a people's health at serious risk. But here's where the controversy deepens. Zeldin insists that the landmark 2009 finding was based on what he calls the most pessimistic views of the science available at the time. The encouraging news is that much of the dire scientific speculation from 2009 never actually materialized. Zeldin explained on CNN's State of the Union. According to him, today's understanding of climate science is more grounded and less alarming than what experts feared 16 years ago. In his view, it's time to base regulations on present-day data rather than what he describes as outdated, worst-case assumptions from over a decade ago. To understand why this is such a pivotal issue, it helps to recall what the 2009 endangerment finding actually accomplished. Spurred by a Supreme Court mandate, the EPA's declaration in 2009 provided the crucial legal foundation for a host of major environmental rules targeting climate pollution. Essentially, it gave the federal government its sharpest tool for tackling the greenhouse gases that are driving global warming. Repealing it, as the proposed plan aims to do, could take away the government's strongest authority for regulating carbon emissions and combating climate change. Yet the administration's argument for the repeal takes a controversial turn. The official proposal claims that while greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere have certainly increased since 2009, much of this rise comes from emissions outside the United States. More importantly, the administration contends the actual negative impact on public health and well-being within the U.S. has not matched the dire predictions that guided the original finding. This point alone is sure to spark heated exchanges between policymakers, scientists, and activists. Should U.S. regulations depend on what happens abroad or strictly on domestic consequences? Adding to the complexity is the fact that despite these claims, the United States remains the world's second largest source of greenhouse gases and has historically emitted more planet-warming pollution than any other nation. Not only have multiple scientific studies since 2009 reinforced the dangers posed by climate change, but some even link climate pollution directly to premature deaths and widespread health risks. Take the ongoing research from international health authorities. The evidence connecting climate change to both rising mortality rates and worsening public health is stronger than ever. And this is the part most people miss. Calls to scale back regulation ignore a growing body of science showing that the climate crisis is already taking human lives. Consider, too, just how much the world has changed since the EPA's original ruling. As climate scientist Zeke Hausfather points out, average global temperatures have climbed by another 0.45 degrees Celsius, about 0.81 degrees Fahrenheit, in the last 16 years alone, pushing us to a total increase of 1.4 degrees Celsius since pre-industrial times. According to Hausfather, both the scientific certainty about climate change and the evidence of its destructive effects have only grown clearer, contradicting any suggestion that the scientific foundation of the 2009 endangerment finding has weakened. But this is where the debate gets even more interesting. When pressed on whether he rejects the scientific consensus that greenhouse gases from human activity drive climate change, Zeldin deflected, implying that critics were misrepresenting his words. Meanwhile, the EPA is currently reviewing public comments on its plan to rescind all emissions rules stemming from the 2009 finding, rules that govern everything from car tailpipes to power plant smokestacks. There's another layer to this battle. Zeldin maintains that regardless of personal opinions or scientific arguments, he is bound by the law as interpreted by the Supreme Court. He emphasized that he has no authority to get creative with regulatory language, and that when Congress has not explicitly granted power, he cannot fill those gaps based on his own discretion. In other words, Zeldin argues, it is up to lawmakers, not federal agencies, to write rules addressing climate change. Now, over to you. Should the EPA be allowed to act decisively on the scientific consensus about climate change threats? Or are federal agencies overstepping their boundaries when they interpret the law? Do you agree with Administrator Zeldin's reliance on more recent data? Or do you see this as downplaying the very real and urgent dangers documented by researchers worldwide? How should the U.S. weigh domestic versus global impacts when setting policy? Drop your thoughts and your fiercest arguments in the comments. Does this shift mark needed pragmatism, or could it be rolling back crucial protections right when they're needed most? CNN's Ella Nilsson and Andrew Friedman contributed reporting.